Hello my dear friends, you're in the Ruslan Belov channel. In this video, we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 24 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates. Before we begin, I would sincerely like to ask you to subscribe to the channel. Your subscription helps support its growth. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed. Let's start today with the Kursk front. Let's take a look at the western area of this bridgehead of the AFU. In the settlement of Zhuravka, the Russian army continues its advance deeper into the settlement and toward the crucial AFU supply route, Highway N07. Additionally, from the settlement of Novenko, movement is underway toward Basovka and the AFU supply route. So let's take a look at how the map was changing. For example, this is the situation by the end of the 3rd of March of 2025. Let's start even earlier. This is the situation on the 2nd of March of 2025. This territory was colored as a contested area. On the 3rd of March, we got geolocations that the Russians managed to capture this territory. On the 4th of March, we received first report from pro-Russian sources that the Russians managed to improve their positions even further, and by the beginning of the 5th of March, the Russians secured the farms on the western side of the settlement. Furthermore, according to most of the mappers, according to pro-Russian resources, according to neutral resources, and according to pro-Ukrainian resources, the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to establish complete control over these farms. So this is the situation by the end of the 4th of February. Of March, as you can see, this pocket was under complete Ukraine control, but by the beginning of the 5th of March, this territory was completely secured. We still haven't received anything that can confirm this, but if it happened, most likely the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation will confirm this information. Now we understand what the Russians are planning to do next, and most likely, first of all, they are going to move in the eastern direction, towards the railways between the settlements of Malaya Lokhnya and Kazachia Lokhnya. If the Russians are able to cut the railways and to cut the road between two settlements, then the Ukrainians in the north would be caught in the cauldron. But obviously, when the Russians start these movements, most likely the Ukrainians will start retreating towards first the settlement of Kosich, and then through the forest in the direction of Kazachia Lokhnya, and then even further in the direction of Sudzha. So we believe that we can start counting days for the Ukrainians for the Ukrainian bridgehead in the area of Malaya Lokhnya, where the Russians continue their offensive. Let's discuss the southern part. Today, according to different sources, the Russians also managed to secure the settlement of Kurilovka. The Russians, mainly the neutral and pro-Russian resources, confirm this information today. And we understand that the next target for the Russians is to move further in the western direction, and currently the primary target. The main priority for the Russians is to establish complete control over the settlement of Melovoy. And this big forest, if the Russians are able to take this territory under complete control, then the Russians will be able to shorten the distance to the main supply lines and to the main supply arteria that goes between the settlement of Surgi and the settlement of Sumy. We are talking about this area. So the situation, as you can see, is worsening and worsening for the armed forces of Ukraine. And obviously, before the beginning of the real negotiation process, most likely the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back from this area. Otherwise, they would be caught and most likely destroyed. Now let's move further. Let's discuss the situation in the Kharkiv direction. Today, neutral mappers reported that the Russians managed to improve their positions along the border and to take under control this military object that used to be something like border facilities, where before the war, the Russians and the Ukrainians were transferring the border in this area. So during the previous several days, we've been receiving videos from this area published by the Ukrainian side. For example, yesterday, based on the video published by the Ukrainian side, we have adjusted the most northern part of these facilities, and today neutral mappers confirmed additional progress on the ground. Now let's move further. Let's discuss the situation in the north in Kupin's direction. Today, according to information we have, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, the Ukrainians managed to restore control over the forest to the north of the settlement by the name of Zapadne. So this forest was recaptured by the Ukrainians as a result of counter-offensive operation. And this is exactly what we were talking about several days ago. If you remember, a few days ago, the pro-Ukrainian sources published a very interesting map. Very interesting changes on map that Ukrainians carried out successful counterattack in the direction of the forest in the direction of this territory between the river of Raskol and the settlements of Liman Persh and Sinkivka. And if you remember, we were talking that the main target and the main purpose of this Ukrainian counterattack to reduce Russian logistic capabilities and to reduce the connections between the western and the eastern bank of the river Vaskol. And we expected that most likely the Ukrainians will try to counterattack the Russian positions somewhere in the area of Zapadne and in the vicinity of Dvorichne. And as you can see, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, the Ukrainians carried out this counter-offensive operation during the previous several days, and they managed to restore control in the vicinity of Zapadne. So most likely the Ukrainians will continue this offensive operation. This is a very important position, very important area for the Ukrainians, and most likely they will do everything they can with the purpose not to allow the Russians to continue their offensive there. Another important area is the south in Kupin's direction. Today we got very important updates, and we have adjusted the map as you can see. For example, this is the map by the end of the 4th of March of 2025, and today, by the beginning of the 5th of March, we got significant number of geolocations that confirm Russian control over this dense network of the fortifications. And this is a complete disaster for the Ukrainians, because now the Russians have very powerful and strong position on the Ukrainian side of the river of Zherebets. And from this area, most likely the Russians are planning to continue advancing further in the direction of the city of Liman. And as you can see, when talking about this part, there are no defense barriers in front of the Russians. And this is a greatest disaster for the Ukrainians. Now, let's move further. Several sources reported that the Russians managed to improve their positions in the central part of the city of Chasav Yar. As for now, without any geolocations that can confirm this, pro-Ukrainian sources reported that on the Pokrov's direction, the Ukrainians, as a result of decisive counterattack, managed to restore control completely over the settlement of Uspanivka. I'll remind you that several weeks ago we discussed and we came to the conclusion that most likely the Russians sooner or later would be forced to fall back from this salient. And because as for now this salient has just one purpose, to secure the flank, the northeastern flank for those Russian forces that are currently trying to advance in the direction of the border between Donetsk and the river and the region of Dnipro. Fierce battles are taking place in the Pokrovsk direction. Ukrainian forces have also actively launched attacks on the settlement of Shevchenko, located southwest of Pokrovsk, both yesterday and today. However, there have been no changes on the map so far. The Russian forces have completed the clearing of the settlement of Andreevka and are gradually advancing towards the next settlement, Alexeyevka. As of now, Russian units have not yet entered this settlement. A video has emerged from the settlement of Bogatyr showing a Russian FAB 3000 bomb strike on the command center of Ukrainian forces. This center controls operations in the nearby settlements of Konstantinopol, Alexeyevka, Rozliv, and Bogatyr itself. Reports from Velika Novosilka indicate that the settlement of Privilne has come under full Russian control. Russian troops are attempting to advance further north towards the settlement of Shevchenko. This is a very important location both logistically and economically, as it is home to a large lithium deposit. Beyond Shevchenko lies the main defensive line of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, AFU, in this direction. If Russian forces manage to break through, they will be able to advance approximately 20 kilometers north without significant obstacles, which would be a major gain. Russian aviation has also intensified FAB bomb strikes in the Zaporizhzhia direction. Strikes have been carried out on the city of Huliaipol as well as north of the city of Orikhiv. Slightly further west, Russian forces have made small advances today. I want to remind you that politics, particularly the negotiations between Trump and Putin, currently have a significant impact on the course of military operations. It is evident that Russian activity on the front has somewhat subsided, while Ukrainian forces are attempting counterattacks in various parts of the Eastern Front. It would not be surprising if Trump asked Vladimir Putin to scale down offensive operations to create a more favorable backdrop for negotiations. In any case, the situation will soon become clearer, as the Ukrainian side has refused to move towards peace, and the US has halted arms and equipment supplies. We will see how this affects the front line in the near future.